Food for thought. Do it and speak up. Speak up for yourself. Life is absolutely terrifying. And at times we just want to become as small as we can. Sometimes we just want to shrink ourselves into the tiniest ball so no one notices us. And that's okay. Because that's what makes us feel safe. But the thing is, safety can hinder us. Safety can be the obstacle that is in front of us that stops us from reaching our next goal. And being safe is so important. Feeling safe is so important. And being comfortable in your environment is so important. But that's not the number one key or way to get where you want. And that is when we have to be uncomfortable and speak up. When you are in the situation of wanting to feel small, when you are in the situation of not wanting to be noticed, it's just out of uncomfortability and fear and not wanting to sometimes upset other people. But sometimes we have to be that. Sometimes we have to be that wave in the stillness of the pond. Sometimes we have to step out of our comfort zone and speak up. Because if we don't speak up, then we are gonna not be ignored, but become unnoticed when things are needed to be done. Do you remember in school when the quietest person says something and you notice them for the first time? That's not an issue necessarily depending upon the situation, but it's to the extent of just make yourself known enough to be able to speak up, but you don't have to be the loudest one in the room. Because there is a certain balance of keeping your peace, keeping your sense of what you are to yourself, and using your voice powerfully at times when things are needed to be said. But on the other hand, if you don't even use your quietness as your superpower, that superpower will not be there. Because on one side of the spectrum, there are people in a room that are a know-it-all and they are so loud and everything that they say just goes over some people's heads because they speak so much. But then on the other hand, there are people in the room who don't say anything at all. And their presence goes unnoticed. And they're like, oh, so-and-so was in the room. I didn't even notice them. But then in the middle, you could be this. You could be the person who is noticed, but is quiet, but articulate. You don't have to be somebody who's the loudest in the room nor the quietest. You can use your voice as a superpower and use it to get your point across. Because when you are the quietest, but the most articulate, you can be able to really accentuate, you can really begin to formulate and create a statement, a sentence, a point, a gesture, whatever you want to create, and use it powerfully. Because you know the people who are thinkers, and you know the people who are very concise with their words, but the things that they say are the most impactful, the most meaningful. And those are the people who critically think and can formulate something. But do not think you're going to be perfect at that. I'm not perfect at it. No one's perfect at it the first time. And so that's why you should practice and speak up. Speak up when you think something could be different. Speak up when you have a question. Because honestly, it goes back to the fundamentals of, it's kind of cliche, but no question is a dumb question, because literally somebody else could have that exact same question. You've probably heard that 1,000 times during school. but the statement holds truth. Because remember you being in class and somebody else asked the exact same question that you had, and you felt a little less alone. That's how it is in the real life. It's not going to be exactly like that. But maybe you are that other person who has that exact same question. You have to think of it like that. Maybe you are that other student who has that exact same question. And if that's the way that you can work up the confidence to do that, then do it. Because you might have a fear of annoying somebody, of irritating somebody, of not feeling like enough, feeling like, oh my gosh, what if they make fun of me? What if other people judge me? But at the end of the day, all that matters is that you have clarification. All that matters is that you get what you need and what you want and what you truly deserve. Because you have to advocate for yourself, even when it's annoying. Because with the schools that I had, or went to, and the current school that I go to, there are IEPs, individual educational plans, I think that's what they're called. But they're basically like certain curriculums or certain amenities for students with dyslexia or ADHD or neurological divergence. There are certain extra help. Like, for example, if a kid needs extra time for a test, they get like an hour and a half more. Or if a student needs, a friend of mine, she has like dysgraphia and some other things, and so she gets notes from the teacher ahead of time and can just listen audibly to what the teacher is saying and fill in notes that the teacher gave to her, so then she can focus on both of them. And without speaking up for yourself, without speaking up for what you need, you wouldn't be able to get that. And I bring that up as an example because those resources are essential for many different people with many different learning styles. And they advocate for themselves, no matter how dumb that person might feel in their life. They are entitled, and they should have the ability to have their respective resources, but they must speak up for themselves. And whether you are neurodivergent or you're not, regardless, you must speak up for yourself to get what you want and to advocate for yourself. Because no one's going to hand it out to you like candy. I wish that's how it was, that it wouldn't have to be so hard. But that is not life. You and I have to advocate for ourselves, even when we feel so dumb, and even when we feel like we irritate people. Because that question, that resource, might be the bridge of you crossing to your next accomplishment. Because there are going to be so many different people with so many different ways of communicating and of understanding, and patience levels and understanding. I might have said that already. But you're going to have to learn how to communicate with multiple people. Because yes, certain regions of my country have different ways of speaking to people. My boss from school, I work at school, she was telling me that she's from the east area, and she told me how they're very rude up there, how they're very just not kind people. But then when she came here, they're very nice, they're very warm, they're very welcoming, they're very kind. And she was very shocked by that culture, even though we're in the same country. And the thing is, learning how to communicate with the people on her East Coast and then where we are now was very different. But she had to learn how to talk to different people. And during her time of her new job, of her new living area, she had to ask questions. And she had to learn how to speak to people differently on the East Coast than she did where we are. And it's the same principle of you having to ask questions and to formulate them in a way that gets you what you want. Because I bring this up. Not yesterday, but it was this past week. So when I eat my lunch, I usually like walk a bit and then find a place to sit. And there's this Mexican food truck. And I was like thinking, I'm like, oh my gosh, like I want to ask him how he started his business, why he started his business, and etc. And that was probably back in June that I was thinking that. And go about my day, usually sit there, whatever, cool. And so I see the guy, I assume who is the owner of the business, and I ask him, I was done eating, and he was like, I don't know, behind the truck. And I was like, hi, excuse me, are you the owner of this business? And he said, yes, I am. And I asked him, what was your inspiration to create this food truck? And he replied, well, I don't even remember what he said that his inspiration was, but he was just telling me about how he started from a little push cart to buying a bigger push cart and hustling every day. And all of a sudden he got a bigger push cart and then 2 push carts. And then he invested in a truck, a small truck. When I say truck, I mean like a food truck. I don't know if you're familiar with those, but it's literally like a mini mobile home. And it has like a kitchen inside, and it's very, very small. It's not even like a truck size. It's maybe about the size of a car, but like empty the insides and throw in a kitchen, and that's kind of like a food truck. And he told me that he started with a food truck, and then he expanded to a bigger food truck, and then now he has 3 in the city that I'm staying at. And he just told me that you just have to hustle. You just have to do it. You have to stay consistent. And when people, he was telling me how there was many food trucks that stayed, but all of them left when the business ran low, when the business got low. But he stuck it through. And without having the courage to talk to him, without having the courage to ask him questions and to have the confidence within myself to do it, I wouldn't have been able to hear his beautiful story. And he's not from here. He's from Mexico, or I assume some part of Mexico. But he says he's not from here, but I just assume Mexico, not from like Spain or something. Or like, I should say the southern states, or like the southern area. But it was really cool. And learning about that and being open enough to ask him that question is just the tip of the iceberg of you doing the same. Of you wanting to speak up for yourself. Because it is so important to remember that you are valid. All your questions are valid. Every single thing about you is so valid. Because you exist. Plain and simple, because you exist, your feelings, your thoughts, your questions, your passions, your emotions are so valid. And so the next time you hesitate, and the next time you do not think your question is enough, ask it anyway. Because your question is so valid. Because you, as a human being, are so valid. Food for thought.